Welcome to SHOT Show TV. I'm David Lombardo. We're with Ryan Price today at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and old friend Joe Bartozzi, who's the president and CEO of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for having us.
So, suicide prevention is really becoming a bigger and bigger thing. In fact, in my own life, just in the past year, we've had two people take their own life. Young people, very young.
Sorry
One was
to hear
12.
that. Wow.
And it's just, I'm not quite sure how this is happening and what's going on. What is going on?
It's complicated. What we know about suicide is that most of them take place when multiple converging factors come together at a time when a person has access to something that could become lethal. And so that's why I think our partnership with NSSF is so important, because firearms are lethal and they are used in over 50% of suicides. And so, it's really important for us to take away maybe as many variables as we can and say, if you own a firearm, if you have access to one, you should know what to do if you or a loved one is struggling. So it's really important. It's we can't put our finger on one specific thing necessarily, but what we can do is work to educate people who own firearms in how to recognize the signs that someone might be at risk, and then give them the tools to get the help for them or the person that needs it.
Sure. I talk to a lot of people, and there's this sense that it's my Second Amendment right, we can have a gun, we can do whatever we want. And my response always is, with privilege comes responsibility. And I don't want the government telling us what to do, but within our own culture, like National Shooting Sports Foundation, we need to say we need to do these things. We don't want the government doing it, but we need to do these things. Is that the partnership?
It is. We've learned from them a lot of things, and this is a process, right? And we figured out from AFSP and our partners with the VA that suicide is preventable. Suicide is preventable. When that notion sinks in, now we say, if it's preventable, we can do something about it. And while nobody can do everything, everyone can do something. And if we have the opportunity to remind gun owners about secure storage, about the risks of suicide, whether it be themselves or an at-risk family member, I think we owe it to people to give that information out. We do it free of charge. We make it available. We do these types of shows so people can understand this. But it's a very important part of what we do. And one of the things I'm most proud of in my tenure at NSSF is to really try and carry that message along as much as I possibly can.
I think one of the things, there's a climate, and I don't want to get into politics, but there's a climate that the gun is always responsible for everything that goes wrong. And that agenda is really egregious when it comes to something like suicide, because it covers up the fact of what are the signs of someone and what do you do about it. It's too easy to blame a gun, and that's a political agenda. And so that's something that I'm sure you're fighting, because there are people who say, well, you shouldn't have the gun. You should be paying attention to what's happening in your home.
Yeah, and I think that our approach has been, from the mental health and suicide prevention side, that there are a lot of households in the United States with firearms. There are a lot of people that have fast access to a firearm. And so how can we give them the information and the tools to make good decisions when them or someone in their family is struggling? And it's just that acknowledgement that there are a lot of guns. People, that guns are involved in many suicides at 50%. So why would we do anything other than educate people who own firearms?
Sure. And there's no real common denominator to suicide. 12-year-old kid, a housewife. I mean, military veterans, I get that completely. I'm a Vietnam guy. But policemen, firemen, doctors, it's cross-cultural. I mean, you can't look and say, well, this group you have to watch. You have to watch for signs for everybody. And what kind of signs are there?
Yeah, well, and thank you for your service, by the way. Thank you.
I joined the Army and volunteered to go to Vietnam, and I do it again. Not at 75, but I would do it again.
And thank you. So, and you're right, that having access to a firearm is just like having access to anything lethal. It's a risk factor, puts a person at increased risk. But some of the warning signs So there's sort of a differentiation that you can have risk factors or things that put you at more risk of becoming suicidal or something like that. But then there's warning signs that are like the check engine light on your car, like a red flag, something's wrong. And they're basically in three categories of what people say, talk, and most people who make an attempt to take their life or die by suicide will say they're thinking about it in one way or another. Also moods and behavior, the other two, and these are things that are uncharacteristic for the person or seem more intense than they normally would be or last longer than they should. And what we tell people, we have this great presentation that we could deliver. It's a Talk Saves Lives for firearms owners. And sort of the core message at that is there's all this stuff, but really trust your gut. And if something about someone seems off, go ahead and reach out to them and ask them directly if they're thinking of suicide. That's one of the big myths, is that if you ask someone, they're going to plant the idea in their head, and it's totally not true. And so it's trust your gut. If something seems off, if someone seems like they're desperate or in pain, check in with them and see how they're doing and ask directly about suicide.
Sure. Joe, is this coming through National Shooting Sports Foundation?
It's a partnership with AFSP where we've collaborated on materials, videos, and other types of content that people can use free of charge. We have, of course, it's an extension in a lot of ways of our Project Child Safe program, where we tell people the variety of ways that they can securely store their firearms when they're not being used. Because there's always that tension, well, I need a firearm for self-defense or home defense, and what do I do if I have to lock it up? We explain to them there are plenty of options for safely securing a firearm that also provide access when you need it, but you have to, as an individual, assess your own circumstances. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to this. So we want people to understand there are multiple options, educate yourself on those options, and then pick the one that works best for you. But in any event, as Ryan says, you have to spot the warning signs, you have to be open and receptive to what you're feeling and what you're seeing, and trust your gut, I think, is a very important thing. And as gun owners, we would know what is normal for somebody or what is the baseline for someone's behavior. And if that starts to change, you got to start rethinking perhaps your security or your storage practices. Okay, you can evolve over time. You can modify as things change in your world, in your life, and we certainly encourage that type of thing. And we're proud to be a messenger for this type of education.
One of the things that I've always appreciated about you since you became president, you're interested and concerned about the individual member, about literally the person and the family. With kids, now with the suicide prevention, you've been very active in that sort of thing. And that's really commendable. That's a very commendable thing.
Thank you, Dave.
If people want more information, how do they do it?
Well,
a couple of ways. We're a booth here. We're over in Caesars Forum, 80825, I think, something like that. They can go to afsp.org/firearms or project2025.afsp.org, or NSSF's got a landing page as well.
We have NSSF has our safety and suicide prevention materials. Project Child Safe has materials as well, projectchildsafe.org. But there's plenty, just search on our website, you'll find plenty of resources on these types of things. And again, we make these materials free of charge to all of our members, gun shops, ranges, whatever, and we're happy to do so.
Ryan Price, Joe Bartozzi, thank you so much for being on. A very important topic, and I'm glad you're tackling it.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you, Dave.
For SHOT Show TV, I'm David Lombardi.